Good morning, afternoon, evening, everybody. Again, welcome to the Open Office Hours series by Crowe. Today's topic is NetSuite dashboards. We'll get started. Be respectful of everybody's time. We are recording this session and we'll be sharing the recording via LinkedIn after the session. Please feel free to ask any questions using the Q&A panel window within Zoom. We will start with a high-level presentation of dashboards, and then we're going to move on to the questions that were presented during the registration, and hopefully we'll address every question. If we have extra time, we can address extra questions throughout the webinar. So let me first log into NetSuite. So I'm going to bring in my NetSuite window. Hopefully you all can hear me. If you can't hear me, or if somebody could say if you guys can hear me, that would be great on the Q&A session, but I'm assuming everybody can hear. So I'm gonna log into NetSuite and into my role that I've used for this session. And as most of you probably know, all of you probably know, the first thing when you log into the page, unless you have it configured differently, you're gonna come into the dashboard, your home page, which is basically the dashboard page for NetSuite. When you get NetSuite, sometimes this comes without any information. If you have a Suite Success version of NetSuite, it comes with preloaded dashboards by role. So it really depends on when you started with NetSuite, your journey. But today we'll cover, basic dashboard functionality, and you may already have some of this, and you may or you may not. So hopefully this will be useful. The dashboard, it's in NetSuite basically is all the information you have on your main screen. The first thing with the dashboard is that you have this functionality here on the right, that where you're allowed to personalize the dashboard. The first thing is you can change the layout. There are 4 types of layouts depending on what kind of portlets, which are these little windows here, you want to show. So I have it here for this layout, but you can change it to when you have more on the right, and you can drag and drop, or you can have it where it's just one big portlet across. So it really depends on your personal preference. This dashboard functionality is personalized, so each person can have their own dashboard unless it's been published by the organization, and we'll cover that in a little bit. I'm gonna go back to my original layout, and of course, because I changed it, everything moved around, so I can then go over the second thing, which is drag and drop. Everything in the dashboard you can drag and drop and put it where you want. So it's you optimize in the way that you want it laid out for you. The next thing is that you can minimize portlets that you're not using, so that again you can maximize the layout. So reminders frequently, you can minimize that and only open it whenever you want. That way you can have things like a KPI meter expanded here, or my shortcuts expanded if I drag and drop. So it is again personalizable. If you want to, one of the main portlets that you have is this settings dashboard. It's portlet, which is standard with NetSuite, and it'll tell you, basically give you the options of the things that you can do from a settings perspective, as far as personalizing the dashboard, setting your personal preferences. If you have the permission to publish the dashboard, which as an administrator I do, you'll have that. And then other things like changing your email. If you change email, it'll change your email for login. Changing your password and updating your security questions. So these are standard functionality here. If I want to remove this, any portlet, all you have to do, you'll see settings I cannot remove. But if I wanted to remove my shortcuts portlet, all I have to do is hover over the 3 dots here and click, remove. If I remove it, it'll be gone from my dashboard and it will not be there again. So you may have things that you want to remove every once in a while, or they're not useful anymore. The next step is obviously you want to add some things to your dashboard. So in order to add portlets to your dashboard, you come to this personalized link and you click on the arrow, and it's going to show you standard content you can add. It's going to show you suite apps that you may have downloaded that you may add, and it shows you what you currently have used. Within the standard content, if you hover over any of the standard content, it'll tell you how many you have left to use in the standard for that specific screen, right? So in this case, I have 6 custom portlets that I can add, or I have 4 custom searches that I can add. Once you define what you want to add, then you can drag and drop it into wherever you want it to go, and it's going to come in without any data. And here you can go and select what you want to set up in that specific portlet. So in this case, this is a safe search portlet, so I can show safe searches that I've created. And we talked about this a couple of weeks ago, how you can tag a safe search to be displayed as a dashboard portlet. Not every safe search is going to be here. So you have to identify that first, but you can see your list of searches. And once you know what you want to add, then you can add that. You can give it a name. So I'm going to give it just a office hours search. And you can define how many results you want to display by default on the search. Other things you can define is, how do you drill down? I usually recommend to a new page, the theme, to a color. If you want to make some changes to that, and then some other background information. So once you define that, you click search. It's going to give you that result. In this case, I defined 5. So there are 2,000 records on this search. So it's only showing me the first 5 in the way that the safe search was defined, and with the sorting functionality, the columns, etc. One thing to note that there is a limitation in the portlet and how many columns you can choose. So if you have 15 columns, I think that the top is 7 columns, regardless of the size. So it won't be able to show you the entire safe search, but from here you can drill down by just clicking on the link here, and it will take you to that safe search. So it's a little bit of basic navigation. The first questions that we have, moving on to the questions, are how to customize a dashboard. So I've started with the basic functionality there. I will dive deeper into more specific things as we go along the questions, but that's basically how you customize a dashboard, how you start the customization of a dashboard. Next question is, how to handle multi-subsidiary and multi-position dashboard. So there is a suite app called Subsidiary Navigator. So if you do have one world and you in your role have access to multiple subsidiaries, there is a subsidiary, a suite app. And the suite apps, if you have that permission or you're an administrator, if you come to customizations, suite bundler, search and install bundles. I already have that installed, so I'll just show you. It's called, there's a list of suite app, it's now called, it used to be just a bundle, called the Subsidiary Navigator. And that Subsidiary Navigator is a free suite app that allows you to put in your dashboard and has some cool functionality as far as what you can do with different subsidiaries. So once you install that, again, it's free. If you have Suite Success, it's something that is part of the bundles that are installed when you have Suite Success. But if you don't have Suite Success, the SKU, and if you don't know what Suite Success is, just put a question on the panel and I'll answer that. But I assume that most of you may know what Suite Success is at this point. But it'll be as part of your dashboard or your bundles if you do have that. Once you have that installed, when you come to personalize to suite apps, you see that I have the Subsidiary Navigator. I can add it just as any other portlet to my screen, and it's going to show me a list of my subsidiaries here. Right, you see the way the subsidiary structure is set up in your One World account, again, based on the subsidiaries you have access to. So what this Subsidiary Navigator does is that if I'm going to remove this portlet for visibility, and I'm going to move this down. So you'll see, for example, that I have this customer portlet and it has certain information here. Let me just show you these key performance indicators. I'm going to drag this up. put it right here under the on top. If I select a specific subsidiary, so for example, I select subsidiary 1, what this will do is that it will refresh all the portlets that are in that screen to show you information only about that specific subsidiary. So as I switch from one subsidiary to the other, you'll see that this portlet, the numbers change. The data, the values, or what I have as things that I want to see are the same, but the results will change. And that's pretty cool if you want to just do something for a specific subsidiary. Of course, if you only have access to that subsidiary, the results are always specific to that subsidiary in your dashboard. It always follows the permissions that you have as part of your role. So here it's showing everything again. So that's a little bit about subsidiary navigation and what it can do. Everything else about subsidiaries would have to be part of your results, of your searches, of your reports in order to be able to be segregated. So if you want to see a safe search for everything and you want to be able to filter by subsidiary, you would have to have those filters as part of your safe search, just like you would in any safe search, in order to show those there. So that answers the first question. The second question was, how do you use dashboards to pull in data from reports? So, and I'm just going to answer this in a couple of different questions. So you have, we covered this in the last couple of sessions. You have reports, which are all these reports that are here in the reports menu, and excuse me, and you have save searches. So sometimes those words are used interchangeably by users, but I'm going to answer this in the context of both reports and save searches. So in the case of reports, you have the capability of adding what's called report snapshots. You can't add the full report, but you can add report snapshots. So report snapshot, it's basically a specific view of a report that you've created a snapshot, a photograph of, and it'll be dynamic in the results, but the view is going to be a snapshot. I'm just going to drag this into my dashboard. So once I drag it, it's going to ask me what report I want to use. So I have, when I go to setup, I'm going to see all the reports that have snapshots available. Again, this list is limited. So if I want to see, for example, comparative sales orders, and the report is devised as this month versus last month. This is the standard report, but I can change it. I want to see this quarter versus last quarter, and I can do other configuration of how I want to highlight things. So you can play around with that, and I click save. Just thinking. So once I define that, is going to create that snapshot report. Let me see what's going on here. Let me refresh this. Yeah, it's going to create this snapshot report. So obviously this report doesn't say much, but if I do, for example, I can see on the left here that I can change the period. So if I say last year versus year before last, and I change that to a couple of years ago, it's going to refresh the data and it's going to show me that information. Within it, as I scroll through the report, I can see the values for the different months. I can change that report from this view to a column view or to a normal stand-up column view. And if I want to look at the report, I can just come here and click View Report, and it's going to open that window and it's going to show me that report that I'm looking at. For the dates that I have on that portlet, it's going to automatically take those dates to the report. So that's how you would add a report. Just to touch on report dashboards or snapshots, there is an article on Suite Answers. So if you're not familiar with Suite Answers, is the sort of the knowledge base of NetSuite. That if you go to report snapshots, is going to tell you which reports you can create snapshots for. You can't do that for every report. Not every report is enabled for that, but it tells you all the reports that you can create snapshots for. I'm having trouble with that word. And in order to create a report snapshot, you have to customize it. You see that this report, this is a standard snapshot from NetSuite. So I can customize the report, but I don't have the snapshot view here. But if I create a customized report, and I'm just going to keep it simple and say, you know, version 2, and I'm not going to necessarily add anything to it. I'm just going to rename this column from amount comparison to just comparison, just so that we know that it's different. And I click save. It creates a new report for me. And I'm going to have the ability to create a snapshot for that report. For whatever reason, it didn't give me that ability, but I should have a button here where I can create a snapshot down here. So that's how you create a snapshot report. There's a lot of information on Suite Answer for that. The next is how to add a save. So we talked about save searches before. How to add a save search, but basically if you come to personalize, I'm going to remove this one to save some space. You'll have a custom search portlet, and again, you have limited number of things you can add to your dashboard in a standard window, but you'll be able to, you know, add a search, and within the search, you just click the setup and you select the search that you want to add. And once you click the search, you can you know, view information from that search. Say 20. If the results has no values, it's going to give you that there's no values, and once you have it, you can drag and drop it or minimize it. So we covered that, and we'll cover that a couple of times. Again, just for specific examples that people have asked. The other thing that you can add is trend graphs. So a trend graph is going to be a basically it's going to show you a trend information that you have in your system. So to add trend graphs, you can just drag the trend graphs portlet, and again, like everything, you're going to set up the trend graph that you want to define. So I have a custom KPI. So I want to add, for example, if I want to add a trend graph that has multiple KPIs in it, I can define, for example, you know, income, and just type it in. I can define revenue. It's one of the standard KPIs that I can add, and it allows me to add two more KPIs here. So if I want to see this against expenses, and I want to see that also against revenue. Let's say I track revenue separate from my income. You know, I can define, do I want it weekly, monthly? So I want to track this on a monthly basis. And you know, other information here. If I want to move it average, I want to see my 6-month moving average here. And you can define the colors that you want to use for this, if you want to. Once I select my KPIs, I'm going to see this graph here. It's going to show me, you know, that trend graph for those 3 specific values that I define in this one. So this is a very, very cool information. And from here, you know, you can drill down. You can see more information you can't drill down, sorry, but you can see the values there, and you can then go to specific reports or KPIs. These KPIs are based on standard KPIs. You can also add custom KPIs. We're not necessarily going to cover KPI creation in this webinar, but you know, that's something that we'll cover later. But just to show you where the KPIs are defined, if you're an administrator, if you come to customization center and tabs, you have 2 things here. You have KPI dashboards, which is where you can create your dashboards, and I'll talk about dashboards in a second. And then you can create KPIs by creating safe searches. Safe searches are the basis for KPIs that show up, for custom KPIs that show up in your dashboard. And again, those are something that we covered a couple of weeks ago, and there's plenty of information in Suite Answers to talk about KPIs. So let me minimize this and talk about two more dashboard objects. One is the key performance indicators, or KPIs, we just talked about, and the other one is the KPI scorecard. So if you come to your personalized portlet here, you'll see that you only have the ability to have one KPI scorecard and one key performance indicator portlet at the same time in your screen. But once you drag and drop it and you have your key performance indicators, you can set up multiple KPIs. So the way you set up KPIs is, again, with everything, you're going to come here to the setup window, and you're going to have a list of standard KPIs that come in the system that you can track. So I can choose any KPI. I'm just going to choose, for example, payables. You click on it and drag it to the right and click done. It's going to add it to your list. You can define what you want to see. So I want to see, today, and it's going to automatically default a comparison. So same day last month. You can change that comparison. It intelligently adds something that makes sense, but you can change that to the same day last year, last month, etc. So I'm going to say same day last month. You can define if you want to highlight it. Highlighted means that it's going to show up in the top. Headline means that it's going to show up in the top, and highlighted just means if you want to make it bold, right? And I can also drag and drop it if it's important to me, and I can put it somewhere else in that. I can also add custom KPIs. These custom KPIs are the ones that are created from safe searches that you can define yourself. And once you have defined them, then you can add them and you can check them off as showing dashboard. They'll be available here. So this account has a lot of KPIs. So, I'm not going to select any right now, but you can drag them and put them here, and you'll be the same concept. You can define ranges and show them here. So once you have defined your KPI, you have an option of defining how the pop-up trend graphs show up here from that KPI. So you can look at this definitions. All of them have help, so you can do that. And then once you do it, you'll see that payables showed up in my headline, and I have payables now here. You see it's highlighted because I said that, and it's showing me the values that I selected. This is my payable today versus the same day last month. I can refresh within the portlet. I can refresh that specific portlet or that specific KPI. That's something I failed to mention. Every portlet has a refresh button that you can select to just refresh that portlet, or you can obviously always refresh your entire browser window. And within the KPI, you can then you can click and open that KPI. So I can click here, and it's going to take me to that specific report that is driving that KPI. And then from that report, then you can do, all the other investigation or digging you want to do. So those are KPIs. Again, you can add as many as you want that are existing in the system. You can only have, 4 natively. You can have more, but 4 is the comfortable headlines here. But you can add as many as you want. It shows you that also the change from one period to the other. The other thing is the key performance in the KPI dashboard or scorecard, I'm sorry, which is this. And you can only have one showing, but you can change what you see. So if you come to setup, there's multiple KPI scorecards defined. Again, if you have Suite Success, a lot of those come with the Suite Success account. So you have access to those already. If you don't have a Suite Success account, this can be created, and you don't have any KPI scorecards, this can be created without going to that KPI scorecard option that I showed before. But this is where you can define which one you see, and you can change that. So if I want to go from customer to the board metrics, I can define you know, I want to see board metrics. Some are specific to sales, so you can see if I want to see my team or only mine. So I'm going to put it to all here, and where you want the KPIs. So on the left, I'm going to show this on the left for the trend graphs, and I want to see the show trend graph icon. So I click save, and it's going to refresh, change that KPI scorecard from customer to the board metrics, and it's going to show me the board metrics that I have defined in this account. And you can see here that it's very powerful. It has multiple comparisons that you can see in your dashboard. Very, a lot of information, and you can drill down to any of these periods. And you'll see here that this has this pop-up trend graph, which we also have available in the key performance indicator here. And what that does is that if you click on that, it's going to pop up a trend graph for that specific scorecard or KPI for the period that's in that specific, defining that specific scorecard, but then you can also change it to other period comparisons if you want, and you can change this here. Once you have this, with everything that's a pop-up trend graph, you can export it if you want it. So you're making a presentation for the board or for your manager, you can take this and export it, and it's going to give you, you can export it as a CSV, the data, or you can download an image that you can just paste into your PowerPoint presentation. So you don't have to download the data, graph it again in Excel, etc. So very useful stuff there. Next question was how many clients customize more than one dashboard per role? So I mean, it's really a client preference. You have, in any of these specific, what I'm going to call menu options, you have the ability of creating other dashboards. So you have your home dashboard, which is where you're going to land, but I could create separate dashboards in any of these screens. And within this, you see that it looks the same. It has portlets already defined here that are predefined, but you can personalize this and add additional dashboards. So even though you have limited real estate in the home dashboard screen, you can have 2 or 3 multiple dashboards created for that specific functionality. So if you're looking at transactions, it might be transaction specific portlets. If you're looking at lists, maybe list specific portlets of things that you want to be able to see easier without having to do multiple clicks. The other thing is that in these custom tabs, all these are considered custom tabs. If you're an administrator, you can define the custom tab. It takes you to the center tab information, and you can define here the categories, and this is a little bit more advanced, but you can define the portlets that you see, and you can add more portlets. So the portlets that are defined here are going to basically define what you can see in the count of portlets when you come to the personalized screen. So if I have 3, search forms, I only have 3 here, and eventually I'm going to run out of search terms that I can add to the actual dashboard. Next question was how to create a new dashboard. We've covered that. Examples of visuals like navigation portlets and tile portlets. We've covered that with the subsidiary navigation. There's a navigation portlet that you can add. It's also a suite app, so you have to download that suite app. It's called basically navigation portlet, and the way you add that is that you'll have custom portlets that you can add. I can drag it, and that navigation portlet, when you define the portlet, it gives you options of portlets that you can have in the system. Some of them can come pre-configured in the account. Some of them you can add, like the navigation portlet. This dashboard tiles is one of them. You can download the dashboard tiles suite app. The navigation portlet is one that's also pre-existing. And what the navigation portlet does is that it gives you predefined navigations for commonly used activities that you have per role. So you can have different roles here that you can change that, and it'll give you activities that you use. So if I'm doing accounts payable in this case, you can always obviously come and do the navigation here like you would to go to an accounts payable, to go purchases or payables, enter a bill, or I can just come here and, you know, to enter a bill by clicking here, and it's going to open a bill screen for me to do my accounts payable functions. So those are shortcuts that NetSuite has given. NetSuite provides you multiple ways of doing the same thing sometimes, but that's just a very nifty way of doing that. You can switch if you have multiple roles, then you can switch that. Portlets is also something you can create. Portlets. Portlets is a kind of script, so it's a little bit more advanced than what we can cover here, or that what I can cover, but that's something that you can find information on Suite Answers for. Next question was how to create fixed dashboards for specific roles. So this is a very good question, and as you can see, dashboards can be highly customizable, and they're very unique to each person. So everybody that has the permission to create and publish a dashboard, or everybody has access to modify the dashboard. If the organization, you know, permits you from doing so. If you have a, if you don't have the permission to, once you have your dashboard, you can personalize it. But if you want to create a dashboard that is unique to a specific role, and you want to publish that dashboard for that role, you have to have the permission to publish a dashboard. So if you look at the settings portlet, there's a permission that I have here called Publish Dashboard. So if you're an administrator, you have the option under users to define whether they can publish a dashboard. So if I go, not users, sorry, roles. So if I go to my roles screen, and if I go to any role within the system, there is a permission under setup called Publish Dashboards. If you don't want a user to be able to publish dashboards, or if you do want a user to be able to publish dashboards, they have to have that permission. So whichever way you want to define that within your organization. But let's say I'm a sales manager and I created a dashboard and I want everybody to see that dashboard. The way basically that would work is that I have to create the dashboard in my role, and then I have to come here to Publish Dashboard, and I give that dashboard a name. So the sample office hours dashboard. Best practice is to give it an ID for. So the ID is a unique value that you give it. So you can add notes. This is a dashboard created for my sales team. You can define whether you want to lock the shortcuts. So the shortcuts basically is, I removed that from before, but the shortcuts is one of the portlets that you can have that shows you shortcuts or bookmarks that you created within NetSuite. So if you want your team to not be able to change the shortcuts portlet, then within the publish dashboard, you would say lock shortcuts means that they can't change it. And lock new bar, and the new bar is this up here, which can be personalized as well. You can add stuff to that. So if you want to lock this because you have added the 2-3 things that they need to do, you can also lock that. Then you define the role. So you'll see here the list of roles that you can publish that dashboard to. This is a little bit technical, but there is something in NetSuite called a center. A center is the way that this is the way that the functions or the permissions, not permissions, but the functions for that role are optimized or defined. And I'll talk about that in a second. But you can only publish a dashboard for roles that have the same center as you. Meaning, that's why if I'm an administrator, I cannot publish a dashboard for salespeople because they have what's called a sales center. So it would have to be done by a sales administrator or a sales manager. That's why I don't see those roles here. I only see a limited list of roles. But once I create a role, let's say I define a role, I can define whether I want to override what they have or not. Usually you want to override it if you're publishing a dashboard. And then you want to define which tabs you want to publish. So we talked about all the tabs that you can have here, right? Every tab can have its own dashboard. So you can define which tabs you want to publish, and then you can define whether you lock whether it's unlocked, meaning they can change it. You give them something, but they can remove it, they can hide it, they can change it. Whether it's completely locked, meaning they can not do anything to it. They need to keep it. They may be able to minimize it, but they cannot move anything around or make any changes to it, or whether you want them to be able to add and move content. So if you want them to keep what you have but add more, then you would say add and move content. That way they can move it around and add additional things. So those are the three options you have. And once you do that, you save that, and that immediately that dashboard or dashboards, depending on what you choose, will be published to that specific role. They may have to log in and out, but besides that, it'll be in their account. Here's a little bit of more help that you can read, but this is basically how you would publish a dashboard to your specific role or roles based on what you want to do in the account. I talked about centers, so I just want to spend a couple minutes on centers. When you create a role, or when you define a role, NetSuite comes with predefined roles. If you have Suite Success, again, I've been repetitive there, but if you have Suite Success, part of what's bundled in with Suite Success is a set of additional customized roles for that specific vertical, warehouse distribution, or services or software, depending on what vertical you purchased when you bought your Suite Success edition. And every role has a different type. When you create a role, that's what you define, a type. And usually the types that are in the system are, you have a sales center for salespeople, you have a accounting center for accounting people, you have executive center for executives, you have a classic center, which is what the administrator has. It doesn't even, you see it here, it's a classic center for the administrator. And then there's other more specialized centers like marketing for marketing personnel, partner for the partner center. So different centers. So that is what defines what you can publish to. You have to be able to, you can only publish to your same center type. So that's a very important thing as you're publishing dashboards. Next question that we had was, how much detail is too much detail on a dashboard report? Again, it's up to you. It's a personal preference. You can only have you can only have so much information. You can define that if it's based on the personal preference. Next question we have was how to create something that might be useful for the management to evaluate employees' sales performance. So it really this will depend on what you want to evaluate, and how you evaluate it. For example, if I change roles here and I go to my sales manager role, I may want I may want to see something different, right, in my dashboard. So you can create saved searches that show you sales by sales rep or any other metrics that you want to track, or you can use standard information. So in this case, I have a report that shows me sales by sales rep. And I can see here that I have, $2.5 million of sales that are unassigned, that don't have a sales rep. And then my other sales reps are here, right? So I can drill down, I can click on that bar, and it's going to take me to my sales by sales rep detail for those sales reps that have that revenue that has no sales rep. And I can see here that most of it is journal entries, not really, a cash or an invoice. So you can obviously then keep diving deeper into the information. So it really depends. If you want specific help in a specific metric that you want to track, just shoot us a support email or contact me, and we can definitely help with that. But like in the last two sessions, say searches and reports, and this one, everything is very personalizable. So even though there's a lot out there in NetSuite that you can see what's standard, it really depends on what you want to track that defines how you track it. The next question was how to set up CAO and CFO dashboards. So you can create roles for the CFO and the CEO. So if you have, again, success, there's predefined executive roles, or you can create your own roles by starting from a specific role and adding permissions of what they want or need to be able to see or do. But adding a dashboard to them, it's going to be the same way. You just have to have that role and either teach them to do their own dashboards or publish a specific dashboard to them. So in this case, you can see that this is the CEO dashboard, and it's very different than other dashboards, and it has things that they care about, right? So it really, again, depends on what they care about. Next question was, how can you show dashboards for project managers and resources that work tasks? So I'm going to switch to another account here. I'm going to close everything here. I have a services account. So all these accounts that I've been showing are called Success accounts. So I'm going to switch to my services account, which is, it'll look very similar because it's NetSuite, it's configured, but I'm going to switch to, a role of a project manager that's been defined as a standard role within the services mid-market Success account. So you can see here that this dashboard is very different than others in the sense that it has very different personalized reminders. So as a project manager, I care about being able to record time or approve times, approve expense reports. They have purchase orders related to my projects. There's key performance indicators related to my projects, etc. One of the things I didn't touch a lot before is about reminders. Reminders is another portlet that's in the system that allow you to have proactive reminders. It's really very useful, and the configuration is the same. You have to have a safe search to be able to create a reminder, and we talked about that a couple of weeks ago. And there's also standard reminders. So one of the things that I created was a safe search called Project Open Tasks. So this safe search shows me all the tasks that I have for my projects that are open. I can add more information to this safe search. Again, we have limits on what we can ask, but I could see here who's assigned to that task, for example. I can add filters like with any safe search so that I can see a specific project. So I'm going to see this prototype project, and it's going to link it to the prototype project that I have, and it shows me the status. It shows me the start and end date, so I can see that I'm definitely behind, and I can add highlighting or anything I want that we covered before in the safe search session to highlight things that are late. I can put them in red, etc. And you can see that it has this the pencil, so this means it's editable. So that means that I can change, if I know this is completed, I can change it here. And once I refresh it, that task disappears because as any safe search, it's not a result anymore. So from here, like with any safe search, you can create notes, or you can go to that task and click on that. It's going to open that specific project task. And then you do the project task. So there's a lot of pre-built functionality for project managers in NetSuite for, in the Success versions, but all of those pre-built functionalities can be very, if you don't have Success, if you started NetSuite before that, you can always add those. Those are just reports that have pre-bundled in those editions. The last question that we had for today was any help getting a dashboard that shows current ARR by customer. So this is very specific to recurring billing and ARM. So again, I'm gonna switch to another account here that I have for that has revenue management, and you'll see here that I'm here as a revenue manager, and there are some pre-built reports with this version that show me annual recurring revenue by customer. And this is just a safe search. So if I go to my setup, it's going to look very familiar to what we've covered before. I have my search, what I want to see, how I drill down. If I want to edit the search and I have permissions to edit the search, I can come here and click edit, and it's going to take me to that search. Now I'm just going to go there so you can see the search that was created for this. This is a annual recurring revenue by customer search, and as you can see here, and we covered safe searches before, this is a sort of a complex safe search in the sense that it has a formula. There's a semi-complex formula here that calculates that ARR, annualized revenue for that specific report. It has criteria, start and end date, etc. But you can see it's a very simple, or it's a standard safe search basically that you can create, and you can. The only thing that you need to do is have it available as a dashboard view to be able to see it in your dashboard. Everything else, you can add your filters, you can add a highlighting, etc. And then once you have it published, it's going to take you back. And from here, I can drill down and see, well, what is the recurring revenue for this specific Apex software customer. I can click on Apex software, and it's going to take me to the detail of that specific customer that is showing in that dashboard. If I click back to summary, it's going to take me back to that safe search, not to the portlet, because that was a drill down safe search. But this information that I see here is the same information that I see here in my dashboard. And there's a lot of other tiles and information for revenue managers that are standard with ARM, or can be built with ARM, depending on where you stand with your subscription. So that's the end of sort of the questions that we have. There's a very specific question about billing that I can answer offline about how to do recurring billing. But for today's topic of dashboards, that is the last of the prepared remarks. So if you have any additional questions, let me look at the panel here. There is one question about what is the customer portlet, which has the tiles underneath that. So we talked about that portlet. That was so I'm going to go in this account. I'm going to go to the administrator portlet and add it here. So I'm going to add my KPI scorecard, and within that there's a customer in this account. We don't have it in this account, but it was a KPI scorecard within the already created for customers. That was what the customer portlet was. But that did remind me of a couple of different dashboards that come predefined with NetSuite that you can also customize. And if I switch back to the first account, I want to show you those two. So when we did the publish dashboard option, you'll see that there were two tabs. One called customer. There's three tabs: customer dashboard, project dashboard, and vendor dashboard, that are not links here. And what those are is that if I go to my customer list, so if I go to my customers, for example, if I click on any customer, see the list of all my customers. When you're looking at your safe search results, your list, or even in a customer, you'll see this thing pop up. This is a customer dashboard. I'm just going to go from the customers directly, but if you're in the customer record, you'll see this icon right here. This is a customer dashboard that you can also customize. It looks like any dashboard, but it's not available from here. It's available from the customer record. And this customer dashboard gives you very specific information about that customer and only about that customer. And like with everything else, you can personalize it. When NetSuite talks about the customer dashboard, the vendor dashboard, the project dashboard, this is what they're talking about. So if your customer support rep or sales rep is talking to a specific customer, they can pull that dashboard and gives them very comfortable, holistic view of the customer that is hard sometimes to see in the customer form because you have to click on different tabs. So it gives you whether they're current or they're on the AR, if they owe you money, what transactions you've done with them lately, sales by item, what they're buying from you, and then general information about it. So your vendor will have the same, but applicable to the vendor side, and your projects will have the same, again, applicable to projects. So open tasks, project percent complete, et cetera, et cetera. So those are 3 dashboards that are sometimes overlooked. Customers don't know they exist, and they're pretty useful, and they're standard with your NetSuite subscription. So something else to discover by you guys. That's the last question. That's the last question and thing I had as prepared remarks. So I appreciate your time as always. This is going to be published. We're going to have another webinar next week, and we're going to cover Suite Analytics Workbook, which is this analytics tab here, how to create pivot tables and charts that you can also publish to your dashboard. So that'll be slightly covered there as well. And then in 2 weeks, we're going to have a special presentation. We're releasing a new product called the Crowe Data Anomaly Detection, which is a artificial intelligence application that we've created to detect anomalous transactions within your account. That's something we're launching in the next couple of months, but we're going to have a webinar to talk about that. So you'll receive an invitation for that for a couple of weeks from today. So thank you again for your attention. Appreciate your time, and as always, have a great weekend, and hopefully we'll see you next week.